Reading 17 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3. Cormie d'Uglé, February 9th, 1946. Commentary on one's level of being. One person writes to me as follows: I realize that I can do and experience nothing beyond my level of being. My reply is that this observation, which is an intelligent one, divides itself into two parts. I can do nothing beyond my level of being, and I can experience nothing beyond my level of being. In regard to the first part, I can do nothing beyond my level of being. This is correct. A man cannot do beyond his level of being, because his level of being will always make him do what he has always done. This, in the work sense, is not doing. It is not doing in the work sense because it is mechanical. What we do mechanically, according to our level of being, is not doing. We may think we are doing. In fact, we think we are doing at every moment. But it is doing. Our mechanical being is doing. To do in the work sense is to go against mechanical doing. A mechanical man cannot do in the work sense. Whatever he does in the ordinary sense is due to his mechanical being. The observation is quite correct insofar as it says, I realize that I cannot do beyond my level of being. Now, the second part of the observation, I cannot experience beyond my level of being, is not correct. If it were correct, no one could shift from where he is. Everyone would be tied down to his level of being and would be incapable of growing. That is, would be incapable of any growth of being. A man, a woman, can experience beyond their level of being momentarily. They can have flashes of something that belongs beyond their level of being. This is what can carry us on. Otherwise, our situation would be hopeless. If we did not know a little what a thing was like, we would not seek it. Another question was asked: how is it that we can experience beyond our level of being? The answer is that our level of being is not one thing, but is composed on a small scale of slightly different levels of being. This was recently compared with telegraph wires on one of the ordinary telegraph posts, some of which are higher and some of which are lower. Put differently, it means that we have eyes on different levels in our being. That is, better and worse eyes. We have, for example, eyes connected with magnetic center, and eyes that are simply immersed in life. We can speak about our general level of being as a level characterized by sleep and mechanicalness. But if we take our being on a different scale, on a much smaller scale, our being, although it is mechanical in the general sense, has within it gradations or degrees of less mechanical and more mechanical. For this reason, it is possible for us to experience something beyond our general or average level of being. As I said before, unless it were so, we would be fixed down permanently in our present level of being. This means that our receptive side is greater than our doing side. We therefore find ourselves in the position in this work of being able to see better than we can do. In certain situations, we have flashes of understanding in which perhaps we see quite clearly what we should do, and yet we find it impossible to do what we have seen. we are dragged down by our average level of being, which is that which does. We see, for example, quite clearly in a moment of insight that we should behave in a certain way, but when the practical moment comes, we behave in the former way. This discrepancy is inevitable and must be endured with the very greatest patience. A question was then asked, "What then should I do?" This question always arises in everyone's mind. The work answer is about what you should not do. The question should be, what then should we not do? It is just here that the work comes in. The work teaches a great many things that we should not do. For example, that we should not identify with our negative emotions, and so on. But such is our impatient nature that we want to have a definite answer as to what we should do. In fact, our whole psychology is based on this idea. Tell me exactly what I should do. This urgent, illusory, doing impulse has to be overcome in the work completely. It is a life impulse. It is a life thought, a life feeling. And the paradox is that in life we always have a feeling that we can do, and yet from the work point of view, we are really doing nothing, because all the time our level of being is making us act mechanically in every situation, and this we call doing. For this reason, the work speaks about realizing our mechanicalness as one of the first steps towards greater being. If you will always attribute to everything you do in life the idea that you are doing it, of course you will never quite understand where the work comes in. By observation, one has to come to that point at which one realizes that when one thinks one is doing, one is not doing in any way whatsoever, but it is doing. The machine in us is doing. One is doing mechanically what one has always done before. Here, no question of doing in the work sense enters. It is doing. In my case, Nicoll is doing. In your case, Smith, Robinson, Brown is doing. There was a question, well, how can I do in the work sense? The answer is that you cannot do as you are in a work sense. Then what am I to do? Realize that you cannot do. Realize the mechanicalness of your being. Then do you mean that I cannot do anything at all and that I have to think so? No, you have to realize that you cannot do things, not think so. How can I realize this? You can realize this only by observing yourself. If you observe yourself sincerely over a sufficient period, you will begin to realize that you cannot do, that you always do as you always did, and that you cannot change yourself. You know how you always think you can change yourself, and how you are quite certain that you could be different if you wanted to, and you know that you always think this about other people. But you have to realize that you cannot be different from what you are, and from that, to be able to realize that other people cannot be different from what they are. I remember on one occasion when someone asked, "What then shall we do?" The answer was, "Enjoy yourselves." Now this person said, "It would be the easiest thing in the world for me to enjoy myself, but I am a serious man. I have difficulties to face, and I have no time to enjoy myself." You will see that this person had the idea that he could enjoy himself quite easily if he wished. That is, he had an ingrained conviction that he could enjoy himself, that he was doing his duty instead. Of course, the answer is that he could not enjoy himself as he thought he could. He could not stop. he could not step out of his mechanicalness, which made him do what he was doing. It is like a typewriter shouting at a bicycle and saying, "Why do you go round and round?" And the bicycle shouting, "Why do you go up and down?" Clack, clack. Neither can alter its machinery. And so it is with us. We are mechanical, and our first step is to realize we are machines, and that everything we do in all our relationships, in all the thoughts and feelings we go with, we identify with. But the work teaches that we are not machines if we begin to wake up. A machine cannot change itself. A machine cannot remember itself. A machine cannot awaken. But the work teaches we can awaken. We can remember ourselves. We can change ourselves. How then is all this possible? It is only possible by following what the work teaches. The work begins with self-observation, whereby gradually we may realize how we are machines and how we react mechanically to everything. When we begin to realize that we react mechanically to everything and have always been taking these mechanical reactions as I and thinking that we are doing, then we begin to realize that we are really mechanical and that that gift we are given as distinct from animals and pure machines is that we can increase consciousness through observing that we are machines and that all our lives up to now have been mechanical, a series of petty, personal, sensitive, mechanical reactions to everything. Just at this point comes in the whole idea that man can cease to be a machine. This entry of another consciousness of himself is the beginning of the work. Such a man no longer takes himself for granted. Now, the work teaches that you have to do certain things, which takes the form of not doing certain things, as, for example, in general, not identifying. That is, not putting your feeling of I into all your mechanical reactions. So the work consists for a long time in not doing things according to the instructions laid down so clearly in this work on its practical side. Then, do you mean that we can do nothing at all? Yes, you can do one thing. You can remember yourselves. That is the only thing said on the positive side of doing in this work. Everything else is a process of not doing, not behaving mechanically. How can I remember myself? By realizing that you never remember yourself. But I am sure that I always remember myself. You may be sure that you always remember yourself, but just notice whether you do. But I always do what I do consciously. Do you always speak quite consciously, knowing exactly what you are going to say? Yes, I am sure that I do everything consciously, and I am quite aware of what I am saying and doing all the time. In that case, you must observe sincerely and see whether it is quite true. If you are sincere with yourself, you will find that you do and think and feel mechanically, and that for the greater part of the day you are not aware of yourself at all. I do not agree with you. Well, in that case, you must practice self-observation. It is only through self-observation done sincerely and uncritically that you can come into the standpoint of this work in regard to yourself. If you take yourself for granted as being a conscious person who does everything consciously and deliberately, you are not able to connect yourself with this work. This work will fall on deaf ears. What is the object of self-observation? The object of self-observation is to make you aware of the fact that you are not in any way what you think you are. The object of self-observation is to show you, by direct self-experience, that you are really a mechanical person who cannot help doing what you do at every moment, and that if you want to change yourself, which is the object of this work, you have to realize this. Is not this an extremely depressing point of view? Yes. Then why should I take up this work? I see no reason why you should if you are quite satisfied with yourself as you are. I always think that introspection is a very morbid thing. I agree with you, but the work does not teach introspection, but conscious, uncritical self-observation. Introspection is mechanical. Observation is conscious. Don't you think this work makes one very self-centered? Exactly the opposite. It shifts you from this self-satisfied, self-centered view of yourself. It makes you really think you are nothing like what you thought. In short, this work done rightly is very painful to you and will smash up all your self-centeredness. As regards the remark that this work is selfish, you must all understand that this work is going against your selfishness at every moment, against your self-complacency. This work is to wake us up, and if applied rightly, it is a very powerful and painful thing. It is something that destroys your self-complacency, your selfishness, your self-esteem, your fantasies about yourself, your pictures of yourself, and in short, your false personality. It makes you see yourself naked, makes you see what you are really like. It destroys the Pharisee in you. It makes you see that you have to do something about yourself before you try to help other people. But surely helping other people comes first. How can you help other people unless you have become more conscious of yourself? How can the blind lead the blind? Before you start off helping other people, for heaven's sake, look at yourself and see whether you can really help yourself to begin with. Do you call this self-satisfied, imposing your self-will on other people, helping them? The work can help you to change, and when the work has begun to change you, then you can help other people according to the degree that the work has changed you in yourself, and then your help will be valuable. But to start as you are, thinking you can help other people as you are, means simply that you impose your ideas of what other people should be on them without realizing what you are like yourself. The more you change in yourself through pain and self-realization, the more you see what you are like yourself without self-justifying. The more can you help others. The less blind you are to yourself, the more you can help people who are still blind to themselves. But to become less blind to oneself takes many years of hard work and much pain and much overcoming of self-will, self-love, and much overcoming of prejudices, of thinking that you know everything, thinking that you are a starting point in yourself. This work teaches us to start from a quite different point from what we imagine we are. This work does not begin with false personality, with what we imagine we are. The whole world is full of false personalities, and each false personality thinks he or she knows best. The work is a very big thing that gradually drains away from us all these imaginings and falsities about ourselves. Then perhaps we can begin to help other people, but in a quite different way from what we would have started from before we met the work, and before it began to act on us internally through its simplicity and sincerity. The work is a very wonderful thing if you begin to apply it to yourself. Something very quiet and gentle and absolutely genuine at every point, where it really begins to penetrate through layers of falsity and imagination that lie in us uppermost. If you begin to have work eyes in you, that is, eyes that begin to catch some of the meaning of the work, then you may have insights beyond your average level of being. And these insights, if affirmed in the best part of your mind as truth, will gradually change you and begin to work on your level of being and alter being. Then, gradually, what you know on your best side will be able to be done and carried out by your being. The work says that this transformation is possible in everyone if they will only work on themselves. So begin by thinking what non-identifying means with yourself, with your thoughts and your feelings. It is not doing, and gradually this process of not doing will enable you on a very small scale to do.